And it looks like we're about there. One more scoop and you're good. Now go ahead and step on it a little bit, tamp it down.
Arborist and Balboa Park tree steward Bradley Michael Brown is helping volunteers plant a Bahania tree in Balboa Park near Kinsey Street.
Well, it's a Hong Kong orchid, is a common name, and so if it grows right in 5 or 10 years, it's going to look like a big flowering tree.
Dozens of trees were planted during a recent Arbor Day celebration.
And then the idea is that hopefully the mulch, that'll go down around here. That'll help protect that root system. But
the planting marked the completion of a CAL FIRE-funded effort that put 500 new trees in the ground. Brown says trees are one of the things that make the park unique.
It's such a different feeling than being out in the middle of a concrete or an asphalt parking lot and then being under a grove of ficus trees. Everyone can imagine that, right? I mean, who wants to be out in a hot parking lot? That's what the trees, they help. They help prevent that parking lot effect, and it's more calming.
But in spite of the newly planted trees, the park's forest still faces challenges.
So what we were able to do is we digitized the old data from 20 years ago.
Jacqueline Higgins works for the Balboa Park Conservancy. She says every tree in the park is now tracked in an online app called Open Tree Map.
And we overlaid our new data from the recent inventory that was done last year, and we're able to compare and contrast the data sets.
And the findings were not particularly reassuring. The latest survey found 4% of the park's trees were dead. Higgins says another 4% suffer from poor health.
So we're talking over 15,000 trees. When you put numbers to that, the structural value of that 8% decrease is $5 million. So that's a city asset that has just decreased in value for $5 million.
Conservationists are working to reverse the decline. Tomas Herrera-Mischler is the president and CEO of the Balboa Park Conservancy, and he says it's no mystery why the trees are struggling.
Over the course of the last 2 decades, there's been a real impact from climate change with increased temperatures. Insects that were never here before have been migrating north, and so there's quite an impact on the health of the trees.
Herrera-Mischler says the Conservancy is making a concerted effort to care for the health of the city's signature urban forest. Diversity is the key.
20 years ago, we had 348 different species of trees in the park. We're now up to 448 different tree species in the park. The more diversity, the more resilient this forest is. We need a resilient forest because of all the impacts of disease, old age, insects, and drought.
And diversity means there are fewer eucalyptus trees. They're those tall, fast-growing trees with shallow root systems which are prone to falling when storms hit. They used to account for 40% of the park's trees. That's down to just over 20%. And Balboa Park's forest is what the rest of the city could look like. The city's climate action plan, in fact, calls for a much denser tree canopy outside the park.
We're around 5%.